Let that sink in. Because the truth is, modern women have been sold a lie, a dangerous, seductive lie that whispers, you deserve more, you're the victim, he's the problem. And while you're busy waiting for him to change, love is slipping through your fingers like sand. But here's the hard truth. No one's telling you a great marriage isn't about finding the right man. It's about becoming the right woman. Think about it. You've been conditioned to believe that strength means independence, that love should demand nothing from you, that your happiness is his responsibility. But deep down you feel it, the quiet ache of a connection that's fading, the loneliness that creeps in even when he's right beside you. That's not his failure, that's yours. And before you react, before you shut this down because it stings, ask yourself one honest question. If nothing changes, where will we be in 5 years? The answer? Either divorced, miserable but pretending, or if you're brave enough to hear this, transformed. Because the women who save their marriages aren't the ones waiting for a fairy tale. They're the ones who wake up and realize love isn't something you find, it's something you build. And you've been handed the blueprint your grandmothers knew by heart, the one modern feminism convinced you to burn. But here's the good news, it's not too late. The moment you stop blaming and start leading, not with demands but with devotion, everything shifts. Your marriage isn't dying because of him, it's starving because of what you've stopped bringing to it. Respect, nurturing, unshakable loyalty, the kind of feminine energy that doesn't beg for attention, it commands it. Stick with this until the end, because by the time you finish, you'll know exactly how to reignite the love that feels lost. And the reward? A man who looks at you the way he did when you first met, only this time it lasts. Keep watching. This is where the real work begins. You can feel it already, that quiet voice in the back of your mind whispering, something's missing. It's not the fights or the drama that destroy marriages. It's the slow, silent drift. The mornings you wake up next to a stranger. The conversations that used to last hours, now reduced to logistics. Did you pay the bills? What's for dinner? This wasn't the life you signed up for. But here's the painful truth. You didn't lose your marriage in a single moment. You lost it in 1,000 small surrenders. Every time you chose resentment over understanding, every time you dismissed his efforts instead of appreciating them, every time you prioritized being right over being loved, you were building a wall between you, brick by brick, and now you're standing on opposite sides, wondering how it got this cold. But here's what no one tells you. Men don't fall out of love because they stop caring. They fall out of love because they stop feeling needed. Think about the woman he married. She lit up when he walked in the room. She believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. She was his safe place in a world that constantly tells men they're never enough. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being his peace and became another problem he couldn't solve. And when a man feels like he can't win with you, he stops trying, not because he doesn't love you, but because love without respect is a slow death. This isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Because the moment you realize your marriage isn't failing, it's starving, you hold the power to save it. And it starts with one radical shift. Stop keeping score. Start keeping love alive. The rest? That's what we're here to fix. They told you equality meant sameness. They sold you independence as the ultimate goal, that needing your husband made you weak. So you built walls instead of bridges, armor instead of affection. But here's what they didn't tell you. True power isn't in not needing anyone. It's in having the courage to be vulnerable with the one you chose. The modern world convinced you that femininity was outdated, that softness was surrender. So you hardened. You competed instead of connected. You demanded instead of inspired. And now you're exhausted. Because fighting against your nature is a battle no woman can win. This isn't about going backwards. It's about reclaiming what actually works. Your grandmother knew secrets modern women dismiss. That a man who feels respected will move mountains for you. That a home filled with warmth becomes a sanctuary he'll fight to protect. That true influence doesn't come from control, it comes from connection. The lie cost you dearly. It turned marriage into a power struggle when it was meant to be a partnership. It made you suspicious of devotion when devotion is exactly what you crave. But here's the truth they're afraid to tell you. The most empowered woman isn't the one who needs no one. She's the one who has the wisdom to need the right one. That ache you feel, it's not for less responsibility, it's for more meaning. Not for more independence, but for deeper belonging. The good news? The very qualities you were told to suppress are actually your greatest strength. And when you rediscover them, everything changes. She walked out thinking freedom would taste like victory. The papers were signed, the apartment was hers, and for the first month it felt like triumph. But then came the empty mornings, the silence where his voice used to be. The realization that in removing what annoyed her, she'd also lost what nourished her. That's when the truth hit. She hadn't escaped a prison. She'd abandoned a garden. All those little irritations, they were just the price of admission for something precious. His socks on the floor meant he came home to her. His bad jokes meant he still tried to make her laugh. Even their arguments proved they both still cared enough to fight. Now she sees what really died wasn't their marriage, it was her patience, her willingness to nurture, her capacity to forgive. She traded for better or worse for only when it's easy and called it empowerment. But real strength isn't walking away at the first disappointment. It's digging deeper when love gets difficult. Here's what no one admits about divorce. The relief is temporary, the regret is permanent. Because when the dust settles, you don't remember the arguments. You remember his hand finding yours in the hospital waiting room. You don't recall his flaws, you recall how he looked at you when you walked down the aisle. This isn't about staying in toxic situations. It's about recognizing the difference between a marriage that's broken and one you simply stop tending to. Because love isn't a feeling you preserve, it's a choice you make every single day, even on the days it doesn't feel fair. Especially on those days. The numbers don't lie, but they will shock you. Harvard researchers followed 10,000 couples for 15 years and uncovered a brutal truth. The marriages that survived weren't the ones without problems. They were the ones where the woman chose to nurture through the problems. Not endure, not tolerate, nurture. Here's what the data reveals. When women lead with emotional generosity, their husbands become 73% more likely to step up as providers, protectors, and partners. Not because they're controlled, but because they're inspired. The study proves what traditional cultures always knew. A man's devotion grows in direct proportion to how valued he feels at home. But modern women missed this memo. We've been so focused on being equals that we forgot we're complements. Your husband doesn't need another competitor. He needs your unique feminine energy that softens his edges and fuels his purpose. The research is clear. The wives who practice intentional gratitude see their husbands transform within months. Not because the man changed first, but because she did. This isn't about submission, it's about strategy. The science shows that small acts of appreciation register more powerfully with men than grand gestures. His coffee made just right. A text saying, "I believe in you," noticing his effort instead of critiquing his methods. These aren't concessions. They're the secret weapons of women who understand how men are wired. Marriage doesn't fail when love fades. It fails when perspective narrows. That subtle shift from our future to my happiness is where the rot begins. But here's the life-altering truth. The most fulfilled wives aren't those who get everything they want. They're those who want what they've built together. This is the paradox no one tells you about. The more you focus on your individual needs, the emptier your marriage becomes. But when you start asking, what does our love require of me? Instead of what am I getting out of this? That's when the magic happens. Your husband isn't your opponent in some emotional tug of war. He's your teammate in a mission only the two of you can fulfill. Think back to when you first fell in love. You weren't keeping score. You weren't calculating fairness. You gave freely because giving felt like breathing. Somewhere between the wedding and the routine, that generosity got labeled as naivety. But what if it wasn't naivety at all? What if it was wisdom you unlearned? The moment you stop seeing marriage as a 50-50th transaction and start treating it as 100 and 100 surrender to something greater than yourself, that's when the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Not because he suddenly deserves it, but because love isn't about deserving, it's about devotion. This isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding a version of yourself that only exists in the context of we. The woman who can love beyond her moods, who can nurture through disappointment, who understands that marriage isn't a happiness vending machine. It's a sacred workshop where two rough edges polish each other into something timeless. That woman, she doesn't just save marriages, she elevates them. The world told you to armor up, but your real power was always in your ability to soften. Not weak submission, fierce femininity, that magnetic force that turns a house into a home, a man into a protector, and chaos into order. This isn't about outdated roles. It's about reclaiming the influence you already possess but were shamed into abandoning. Look at nature's blueprint. Water doesn't fight the rock. It flows around it and transforms it over time. Your feminine energy works the same way. When you stop confronting and start inspiring, something miraculous happens. His defensiveness melts. His willingness to change grows, not because you demanded it, but because you created the space for it. This is the secret your ancestors knew. A woman's strength isn't measured by how much she can carry alone, but by how much she can inspire others to carry with her. That nurturing instinct you suppress, it's not weakness. It's your superpower. The way you remember birthdays, sense unspoken hurts, create warmth in empty rooms. These aren't trivial skills. They're the glue that holds families together. The modern world called these burdens, but they were always privileges. The privilege to shape hearts, to set the emotional temperature of your home, to be the safe place your husband fights to return to. This isn't about going backward. It's about moving forward with all your weapons, both the logical and the intuitive, both the assertive and the receptive. Because when you finally embrace that your femininity isn't holding you back, it's actually your greatest advantage. That's when you stop competing for power and start radiating it. The uncomfortable reality no one wants to face, your marriage is a mirror. What you see lacking in him is often what you've stopped pouring into the relationship. That distance between you, you helped create it. Every eye roll instead of encouragement, every criticism disguised as helping, every time you withheld affection to punish him, these weren't just moments. They were withdrawals from an emotional bank account that's now dangerously overdrawn. Here's the wake-up call you need. Men don't respond to complaints. They respond to inspiration. The more you point out his failures, the more he'll retreat into them. But when you focus on his potential instead of his shortcomings, something shifts. Not because you're manipulating him, but because you're finally speaking his native language, the language of respect. This isn't about taking all the blame, it's about taking all the power to change the dynamic starting today, the power to break the cycle of resentment, the power to say, maybe I contributed to this problem, which means I can contribute to the solution. That's not weakness, that's warrior energy. Because only the strongest women can look at a struggling marriage and ask, what's my part in this? Instead of waiting for him to fix it all. The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. You can either stay angry or get transformational. The choice is yours, but understand this, the marriage you want is on the other side of the excuses you're making right now. Time to decide what matters more. Your pride or your love. The transformation begins with 3 radical choices, simple to understand, life-changing to implement. First, respect is his oxygen and you control the supply. Not the hollow respect of obedience, but the powerful respect of admiration. When he walks in the room, let your eyes light up like they used to. When he speaks, listen like his words matter, because when you do, they will. Second, replace control with connection. You can't criticize a man into changing, but you can love him into evolving. That project he's struggling with, ask about it. That hobby you roll your eyes at, show interest. These aren't concessions, they're investments. Every moment of genuine connection deposits goodwill that compounds over time. Third, and most transformative, lead with love, not leverage. Stop using intimacy as a bargaining chip. Stop keeping score on who did more. The moment you start giving without expectation is the moment you unlock a level of devotion no argument could ever win. This isn't about becoming a doormat. It's about becoming a magnet. When you focus on these three fundamentals, something miraculous happens. He starts anticipating your needs. He becomes more attentive, not because you trained him, but because you inspired him. The woman who masters these isn't a victim of her marriage. She's the architect of it. The best part? You don't need his participation to start. This revolution begins with you. One intentional choice at a time, one surrendered expectation at a time. The results will follow, but only if you act first. The ball is in your court. What happens next depends entirely on what you do with these three truths. You've been sold the lie that you must choose between ambition and devotion, that success requires sacrificing softness. But here's what high-achieving women with thriving marriages know. Your career demands your competence, but your marriage thrives on your vulnerability. The same intensity you bring to the boardroom becomes toxic when turned inward on your relationship. The excuse "I'm too busy" doesn't hold weight. It's not about time, it's about priority. The 30-second kiss when he walks in the door, the handwritten note tucked in his briefcase, the phone call just to hear his voice. These micro moments of connection don't require hours, they require intention. The truth? You make time for what matters to you. If your marriage is deteriorating, it's not because your schedule is full, it's because your presence is absent. And that defensive voice whispering, "But he doesn't appreciate me either," that's the trap. Transformation always starts with the willing partner. When you begin pouring into your marriage without keeping score, one of two things will happen. Either he'll rise to meet your new energy, or you'll gain the clarity that this chapter needs to end. But you never know until you try, really try, without the safety net of resentment to catch you. This is the ultimate test of your strength. Can you be a lioness at work and a nurturer at home? Not by splitting yourself in half, but by bringing your whole self to each moment. Your competence doesn't cancel your tenderness. Your ambition doesn't erase your ability to adore. The highest status woman isn't the one who needs nothing. It's the one who loves without fear. That's real power. And it's waiting for you to claim it. Close your eyes and fast forward 30 years. Two versions of you exist in parallel futures. The first sits across from a man whose eyes still light up when she enters the room, their laughter lines telling stories of battles fought together and won. The second stares at divorce papers framed by designer furniture in an empty penthouse, the trophies of her independence collecting dust beside the wedding album she can't bear to open. This isn't about fear, it's about clarity. The quality of your marriage doesn't just affect you, it echoes through generations. Your grandchildren will either inherit a blueprint for lasting love or a cautionary tale about pride. That argument you're holding on to, the grudge you're nursing, the standoff you're determined to win? In the rearview mirror of life, these will shrink into insignificance beside the simple question, was it worth losing us over? The women who build legacies understand this secret. Marriage isn't a contract where you tally up offenses. It's a covenant where you outlast storms. The wife who chooses connection over control doesn't lose. She gains a man who would walk through fire to keep her. Not because she demanded it, but because she inspired it. Your future self is watching right now, begging you to see beyond today's frustration. That version of you who either whispers, "Thank God we worked through it," or "If only I'd tried harder." The bridge between these two futures isn't his apology. It's your decision to love beyond your feelings, to build something that outlasts your moods, to plant seeds today that your grandchildren will enjoy the shade from tomorrow. The choice is yours, but make no mistake, it is a choice, and time only moves in one direction. Enough with the half-hearted love that demands perfection. Enough with the conditional devotion that withdraws at the first disappointment. The world has plenty of women who quit. Be the one who stays. Not out of obligation, but out of sacred determination. This is your awakening moment, that lightning bolt realization that your marriage isn't happening to you, it's happening because of you. Every glance, every word, every silent treatment, you're either building a monument or digging a grave. So which will it be? You want his attention? Earn it, not with nagging, but with nobility. Become the woman so radiant in her purpose, so intentional in her love, that he'd rather lose sleep than lose you. That doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. your design. This is where ordinary wives and extraordinary ones diverge. The ordinary focus on what they're not getting. The extraordinary take responsibility for what they're not giving. The ordinary keep score. The extraordinary rewrite the rules. So rise, not against him, but for what you vowed to create together. Love harder when it's difficult. Forgive faster when it hurts. Choose we when me screams louder. This isn't just about saving a marriage. It's about resurrecting the warrior spirit of womanhood that heals instead of wounds, that builds instead of destroys. The time for excuses is over. The era of transformation begins now, not tomorrow. Not when he changes first. Now, stand up and fight, not with weapons, but with wisdom. Not with ultimatums, but with the theories won't change your marriage. Actions will. So here's your battlefield assignment. Tonight, when the house quiets down and the distractions fade, look him in the eyes and ask one dangerous question. What's one thing I could do to make you feel more loved? Then, here's the hard part. Close your mouth and listen. Not to respond, not to defend, just to understand. This isn't about him listing your flaws. It's about you demonstrating radical humility. That single conversation could reveal more than a decade of therapy. Because when a man feels truly heard, something primal shifts. His walls come down, his protective armor cracks. And suddenly, you're not adversaries. You're allies again. But warning, this requires courage. His answer might sting. It might trigger every defensive instinct you have. Breathe through it. This isn't about right or wrong. It's about reconnection. The moment you choose curiosity over contempt is the moment your marriage gets a second chance. Then, tomorrow morning, act on what you learned. Not perfectly, but purposefully. That thing he mentioned, do it without fanfare. No, look what I did for you drama. Just quiet, consistent effort. Watch what happens when he realizes you're actually trying rather than just complaining. This is how dead marriages resurrect. Not through grand gestures, but through daily deposits of intentional love. The ball's in your court now. Will you let pride keep you lonely? Or will you take the first step toward the marriage you both deserve? The clock starts now. Your move, understanding. Let's cut through the illusions. Your marriage will survive or collapse based on one decision. Will you be the architect of change or the prisoner of pride? Every day you wait for him to move first is another day your love atrophies. The cold truth, he may never apologize the way you want. He may never initiate the way you dream. But here's the secret. You don't need him to. Real power isn't in getting him to kneel. It's in choosing to rise above the pettiness. That silent treatment you're giving him, it's not punishing him, it's starving you. That laundry list of grievances you've memorized, it's not a weapon, it's a cage. The moment you stop demanding fairness and start embodying grace is the moment you'll witness a miracle, a man who'd rather die than disappoint you. But this requires the courage to go first, to love when it's undeserved, to give when it's unreciprocated. Not because he's earned it, but because that's who you choose to be. The alternative? A lifetime of keeping score that leaves everyone bankrupt. This is your crossroads. One path leads to the slow death of resentment. The other, to a love so fierce it rewrites your story. You already know which one your future self will thank you for taking. The question is, do you have the guts to walk it? Tick-tock. The clock's running. Every second of hesitation is a brick in the wall between you. Today isn't just another day, it's the day. The day you either break the cycle or become its prisoner. Choose wisely, then act recklessly in the direction of love. Remember how this began? With that jarring question about where the real problem lies? Now you know the answer. Women don't fail as wives because they're inadequate. They fail when they forget their power to transform ordinary men into devoted partners. That ache in your marriage isn't a death sentence, it's a wake-up call. Look at what you now hold, the science that proves your influence, the stories that reveal the cost of walking away, the strategy to rebuild what's broken. This wasn't about blaming you, it was about empowering you. Because when a woman steps into her true feminine strength, not the caricature modern society sells, but the timeless force that builds civilizations, everything in her world shifts, including him. So here's your final truth. Your marriage isn't failing because you're failing. It's failing because you've been playing the wrong game. Not with the wrong man, with the wrong rule book. Toss it out. Return to what works. That woman he fell for? She's still there. Buried under years of frustration maybe, but waiting to resurface. The journey back begins with a single step, one conversation, one act of vulnerability, one decision to lead with love instead of fear. You won't recognize your relationship in 30 days, but you'll feel the thaw starting tomorrow if you start today. This isn't goodbye, it's your invitation. An invitation to become the wife who doesn't just endure her marriage, but elevates it. The choice was always yours. Now you know exactly what to do with it.